Okay, I think I stopped here. Okay, I was on the slide when the connection suddenly was interrupted. Okay, so let me just return to this slide and continue onwards from here, inshallah. I do apologize for the glitch. Okay, um, so let me just continue. Yeah. So Safi argues, yeah, that modern empiricism continued to embrace principles and concepts generated within traditions rooted in divine revelation, and that secularization in the West aimed, in the first instance, at undermining, yeah, the religious, perhaps, authority, and not at the complete repudiation of religious beliefs and values. As such, many religious ideas and values, such as freedom, equality, or the rationality of the universal order became secular values and beliefs. So if we look, for example, into the Quran, yeah, into Hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we can find or we can infer various concepts, yeah, and ideas or values and beliefs, yeah, such as equality, such as freedom, rationality, etc. However, this has become uh, associated with secularism when in fact it has religious roots. So even though when it comes, because I did my research on business ethics, yeah, uh, it is actually rooted in religion, yeah, being ethical in business dealings, in financial transactions. It is rooted actually in religion, and we can find many references, yeah, in not only the Islamic scripture but also other scriptures, yeah, of the importance of behaving ethically when it comes to business transactions. Okay. So the science revelation conflict is neither imperative nor universal, but specific to Western experience and Western religion. So we have to bear this in mind, that when it is presented that there is a conflict, yeah, between science and also revelation or religion, or between the clergy and the church, yeah, and scientists. This is a Western experience which the Muslims did not face. Yeah, so Islamic scientific tradition has never experienced any crisis similar to what occurred in the Western tradition, and such, yeah, to suggest, that generally there is a tension or problem between religion and also science is incorrect. Yeah, an attempt to reproduce this conflict in Muslim culture is hence artificial and inspired by an irrational desire to walk in the footsteps of another culture. Okay. In fact, early Muslim scholars developed elaborate schemes for analyzing the divine text. Yeah, so as I mentioned when we were cut off, if we study the work of Quranic exegetes, yeah, or the Quranic exegesis, will we find that indeed there is a certain methodology of a particular Quranic exegete, yeah, a particular methodology which he or she adopts, yeah, in the exegesis of Quranic verses, um, and that has been detailed and analyzed, yeah, by even scholars that came after. So in that case, it is well developed. However, the analysis of social and historical structures was never based on an articulate and well developed methodology. Yeah, and that knowledge of society and history was based on common sense. Yeah, uh, again here, there was no clear methodology on how to deal with history, yeah, and society. However, it was largely based on common sense. However, during the time of the Khaldun, yeah, Muslim scientific tradition witnessed a serious attempt to actually develop theories for explaining social interaction by identifying historical patterns. Um, so although Ibn Khaldun came up with highly matured theories of society and history, um, he actually did not discuss, yeah, his methodological foundation of his theorizing. Yeah, so the methodological foundation on which those theories are being built upon were not articulated. Yeah, and as such, the absence of mature methods which could facilitate a profound analysis of the purposes and rules determining the actions of early Muslims or the social and political structures governing their interactions. Yeah. So the absence of these methods, yeah, or the methodological foundation was absent. So classical scholars unwittingly elevated to the status of universality the actions of a historically determined community and idealized the behavior of fallible human beings. Yeah. So this was the approach of classical scholars. So classical Muslim scholars could not make full use of the records of history, a source of knowledge alongside revelation. And they were primarily interested in identifying social and political models to be recreated and in specifying exemplary behaviors to be emulated. Yeah. So basically, they tried to construct what was ideal, rather than to what you call it, rather than to uh, look at the historical pattern, etc., and make certain deductions from that. Yeah. So they were not interested in discovering patterns of behavior or isolating general tendencies which could be used to explain political interactions and social relations. So classical Muslim scholars at that time, their main interest was to identify social and political models to be recreated, yeah, and in specifying exemplary behaviors to be emulated rather than to analyze patterns of behavior or to isolate general tendencies which could be then used to explain political interactions and social relations. So classical Muslim scholars had never developed a methodology for analyzing social phenomena. Yeah. So perhaps this is the main shortcoming when it comes to classical Muslim scholars and their study of human behavior. So they treated the Quranic discourse as a comprehensive whole, yeah, and any attempt to determine the Quranic position regarding human act, yeah, by contemplating isolated Quranic statements is bound to lead to inconsistencies or outright misconception, yeah. Uh, so we have to bear this in mind when it comes to analyzing the Quranic discourse and attempting to determine the Quran's position regarding human action, yeah, by just contemplating on particular verses of the Quran. This, according to Salfi, would then perhaps lead to inconsistencies or outright misconception. And to derive rules and concepts from divine revelation, one needs to employ a method sufficiently developed to allow the derivation and systematization of these rules and concepts. Yeah, because oftentimes one would pick, yeah, a Quranic verse and then try to relate this with certain human action, etc., without following a particular methodology. Yeah. Um, as such, he argues that we need to actually do this in a more systematized way, yeah, whereby we have to identify all statements, both Quranic and prophetic, relevant to the question at hand. Then we have to attempt to understand the meaning of those relevant Quranic statements individually and in relation to one another. Yeah, so we have to understand the meaning of the relevant Quranic verse, yeah, as an individual verse, also as a part of many other verses, meaning that it must be looked as a whole, yeah, not only individually as well. And then identify the efficient cause or the illah for which the command or directive embodied in the text was made. Yeah, so we try to identify the illah, uh, uh, or perhaps some commonalities, yeah, between the verses in relation to that particular issue or topic, and then unite and organize the various rules and principles derived from the revealed text, yeah, where the various rules need to be built into a comprehensive and eternally consistent system. Perhaps this is more developed in the field of Islamic jurisprudence, yeah, in the field of fiqh, however less so when it comes to analyzing, yeah, human behavior. So, a thorough study and analysis of human actions and interactions must be undertaken before a revealed rule can be implemented, and that an appropriate methodology for the study of action must be identified. Yeah. So, we were talking about textual inference. Now we are looking at historical inference, yeah, to infer from history. So, discovering the rules governing the underlying structures of social phenomena must begin by analyzing the basic elements which constitute these phenomena, namely human action. and these are the steps in doing so. So similar to outlining the steps, yeah, um, uh, by which one can use to infer from the text or from Quran or from the Hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Safi is presenting now ways in which one can infer from history. Yeah. So here he says, firstly, we have to analyze the actions of the individuals involved there in the social phenomenon under consideration, disclosing its three determinants, yeah, purpose, motive, and also rule. So we have to identify the purpose, yeah, motive, and also rule of human actions in relation to the particular social phenomena which we are looking at or focusing on, and then to classify the various modes or types of action on the basis of the similarities or differences of the components, yeah, and also division of the population into groups and also subgroups. And then to identify the universal rules which govern the interaction between the various groups identified in step B, yeah, identifying what is common, yeah, when it that which is common, which governs, yeah, the interaction between the various groups, and then to systematize the universal rules arrived at in the previous step, eliminating internal inconsistencies within the system of rules acquired through historical derivation. So this is the way in which historical interference should be done. Yeah. So this is what Safi actually proposes. So a unified methodological approach would mean analysis of the text, yeah, and also phenomenon into its basics components, and grouping of similar statements, yeah, and actions under one category. So here basically is the combination between textual inference and also historical inference, yeah. And then identification of the rules that unify the various categories, identification of the general rules and purposes that govern interaction or interrelation of various categories, and finally the systematization of the body of rules obtained through the previous procedures, eliminating contradictions. So basically, yeah. If we look back at textual inference and historical inference, the unified methodological approach basically is a combination of both, yeah, textual and also historical inferences. So, for the purpose of theory building, a set of universal principles is incorporated into a theory designed to actually explain or predict and hence guide the action of specific human interaction, and that the soundness, yeah, of the theory is examined by contrasting hypotheses derived from the theory with observed actions or events. So, as long as the theory is able to provide us with clear explanations or accurate predictions, it should be considered to be sound. Yeah. And if there is a repeated mismatch, yeah, between what is observed and in between the observed behavior and the deduced hypothesis, that then indicates the incorrectness or inaccuracy of some of the universal rules, and this points to the inadequacy of the theory and thus calls for modification, yeah, in the developed theory and or the universal rules and concepts. Yeah. So as long as there is consistency between what you call it between the observed behavior, yeah, and the deduced hypothesis, then inshallah the theory is sound. Yeah. However, if there are inconsistencies, then the theory is inadequate, yeah, and must be modified in a certain way. I know this is very abstract, yeah, and very theoretical in nature. To be honest, I'm also not what you call it when it comes to all these philosophical discussions, etc. Perhaps I'm not the best person to explain this, yeah, and I depended on these two books, yeah, and which I would highly recommend if you are into the philosophical dimension of this discussion, yeah, on human science and the Quran and also Hadith. Perhaps these two books would be of benefit to all, inshallah. So I apologize for the technical glitch just now due to the lost in Wi-Fi signal, and I hope that you have gained some benefit from what I have presented, and perhaps if there are certain points which require further clarification or elaboration, we may discuss so in our meeting on Wednesday afternoon, inshallah. Sorry, on Wednesday morning, inshallah. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters, for tuning in I hope that you will go through the slides at least before our meeting, so that we can discuss things further, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Stay safe, stay sane, take care of yourselves. And again, Ramadan